There are girls born with gold draped around their necks. And then, there are girls born with calloused hands and dreams so tired they no longer remember their own names. In a quiet village called Mbala, people loved the sound of drums, the warmth of laughter, and the beauty of their daughters. But behind the smoke of the kitchen fires, beneath layers of dust, silence, and time, there was a girl named Nyah, a girl no one spoke of. No songs were sung for her, no blessings whispered in her name. And yet, inside her chest, she carried the dignity of a queen. South of Mbongwe, where red clay roads wind like the veins of Mother Earth, there lies a village called Mbala. Small, gentle, and so breathtaking that those who pass through often return just to sit beneath the baobab tree and listen to the djembe drum echoing from afar. The wind in Mbala doesn't rush. It hums like a lullaby. At dawn, roosters call the sun awake. By dusk, barefoot children draw pictures in the dirt with sticks. The people of Mbala don't have much money, but they have more than gold. A neighbor's trust, a village's laughter, faith in their ancestors, and joy that never fades. Once a year, they gather for the calling of the daughters of the earth, a sacred ceremony to honor the girls of the village, believed to carry the breath of the ancestors in their bones. They are proud of their daughters, for eyes like mist, for walks like silent rivers, and for words as soft as kente cloth woven on wedding days. But no one ever called Nyah's name. She lived at the village's edge, in a straw-roofed hut that leaned with the wind, where sunlight only visited when the day was nearly done. Her father, Tamba, was a palm wine tapper, his hands strong as tree roots, his smile always sweet, like honey left in the sun. The villagers called him the man who climbs higher than the sun. When Nyah was little, he once told her, "The sun is far, my child, but if you climb with all your heart, you'll touch the light." Nyah used to chase after him through forest trails, her laughter chasing the rhythm of distant drums. He wore a straw hat, carried a sharp blade, and held a gourd to catch the wine. Whenever he finished, he'd wave her over, press a drop of sweet nectar into her tiny hands, and whisper, "The wine is for grown-ups, but the sweetness is for my daughter." Her mother, Amara, was the only woman in the village who wove kente cloth by hand. She kept a family bracelet, a leather band with small wooden beads, passed down through 7 generations of mothers. When Nyah turned 6, her mother slipped the bracelet onto her wrist and said, "This is memory. This is root. And one day when you are lost, it will remember the way home." But then one morning, the rope snapped. Her father fell from the tallest palm in the village, the one where he once promised to build her a house in the leaves. Nyah was sitting beneath the baobab when they brought his body back. No tears, no screams, just her arms wrapped around his wine gourd. And a whisper, "You said you'd teach me to climb high. I never got to learn." Weeks later, her mother started coughing. At first, it was just fatigue. Then came phlegm. Then each night, the village heard her faint moans, like wind slipping through dry banana leaves. There was no medicine, only forest leaves, whispered prayers, and the bamboo flute they played when a patient was too weak to speak. On a rainy evening, as lightning tore the sky like ancient blades, Amara called her daughter close, placed her hand on Nyah's forehead, where the ancestor bracelet still rested, and said, "If one day the world feels too big and too cold for you, touch this bracelet. It won't speak, but it will lead you back to the truth." She held her daughter's hand, and then she never opened her eyes again. Nyah was only 7 when she became an orphan. No one to braid her hair, no one to call her name, just a worn leather bracelet on her left wrist, and the lonely thump of a drum bleeding through the torn doorway each night. After her mother's funeral, Nyah stood alone by the cold fire pit. The adults whispered, then faded away like morning mist after rain. She didn't cry. She just held the ancestor's bracelet on her left wrist, clutching it like it was the last warm thing left in a world turning cold. In the village of Kigali, people knew a child could not survive alone. not with the dry season approaching, not with hands that small and legs as thin as hope. Then a woman appeared. Bibi Kemi, Nyah's mother's younger sister, had returned to Mbala after nearly 10 years away. She brought no promises. She didn't speak of fate or duty. She simply knelt, embraced Nyah, and whispered, "Your mother once saved my life with a handful of forest leaves. Now it's my turn to repay her." Bibi Kemi didn't come alone. Beside her stood her husband, Baba Zuberi, a quiet man with eyes deep like ancient wells, always carrying a leather pouch filled with herbs. And stories no one dared ask were true or not. They had no children. For 12 rainy seasons, Bibi's belly had stayed as still as a windless lake. Still, they lived peacefully in a palm-thatched house by the Mbembe River, where on full moon nights the fish danced with the rhythm of drums. When Nyah left Kigeli, she carried nothing but a small bundle wrapped in coarse cloth. Inside, her mother's old wrapper, a wooden comb with missing teeth, and the ancestor bracelet. No one came to send her off. Only the rustling palm leaves above, echoing her father's voice. "If you climb with your heart, you'll touch the light." Mbala welcomed her with the smell of hot millet porridge and the sound of distant drums rising from the square. But Bibi Kemi's home sat at the edge of the village, where moonlight arrived late and voices were few. Yet for Nyah, that house felt like a dream pieced together from shattered fragments. That first evening, Bibi made her a bowl of pap with honey. Not too hot, not too sweet, but warmer than anything Nyah had tasted since her father died. She handed Nyah a fresh wrapper. Not luxurious kente, just indigo-dyed cloth washed with care. "From now on, this is your home," she said. "You may call me Mama and Zuberi, Papa, if you wish, and if you don't, we'll wait." Zuberi didn't say much, but that night, he returned from the market and slipped a soft, overripe banana into Nyah's hand. Then nodded, as if he'd just crowned her the queen of their home. Nyah smiled for the first time in weeks. Not wide, not loud, just a small sound, gentle as rain tapping on a hot pot lid. But Bibi heard it, and she smiled back with the quiet joy of a woman who once carried a child in dreams. From that day on, Nyah began to live again. She swept the yard, cooked rice, watered the lemongrass, and slowly learned how to soak beans in ash to make muamua, the village's favorite cake. She braided little girls' hair, laughed again, and every night she whispered before sleep, "Thank you for a roof. Thank you that today was warmer than yesterday. But where there is light, there is always a shadow waiting." Just weeks later, something strange began to happen. Bibi Kemi, once full of strength and fire, began to sleep more. Every morning she would feel sick beside the lemongrass bush, one hand resting on her belly, as if listening to something only she could hear. One afternoon, while Nyah was hanging cloth in the sun, she heard Bibi call gently, "Nyah, come here, child." She found her sitting on a wooden stool beneath the doozy tree, gazing at the horizon. "I think there's something inside me, something I've never had, not in 12 years. Zuberi heard her. He sat beside her. Didn't speak, just held her hand. For the first time in many years. Then he turned to Nyah and said, "Since the day you entered this home, blessings have begun." That night, beneath the Mbala sky, the three of them danced. Not for a festival, not for wine, but because something inside them had lit up, like the first flame before the long, dry season. Nyah didn't know what lay ahead, but in that moment, the 7-year-old girl believed, "Maybe, I still have a family." In the 7th month of the dry season, the Mbembe River sank low, revealing round stones that looked like the bellies of expectant mothers. In the leaf-roofed home at the edge of Mbala, lullabies gave way to labored breaths. Bibi Kemi lay curled beside the embering hearth, her hand gripping the ebony wood necklace she hadn't removed since the day she was married. Each night, she dreamed of a little girl dressed in red cloth, laughing outside the window, a sound crisp and bright, like millet popping in hot oil. By the 9th month, the winds shifted. The season brought with it the scent of osisi blossoms blooming at the village gate. And then, Zola was born. Her cry rang out like a spirit drum, calling back the souls of those who had gone. Her name meant first light. Mbala erupted with joy, as if the harvest had come early. Mothers brought fried yam cakes. Children sang and danced in the yard. And Zuberi, the quietest man in the village, stepped into the square and raised his voice for the first time in years. "My daughter, is the miracle our ancestors returned to us." Zola grew fast, like green grass after rain. Her curls formed tight little clouds. Her skin was rich and dark, like ripe cacao pods. Her eyes, obsidian black. She laughed often, and when she laughed, the whole yard lit up. People began calling her the Golden Daughter. Anyone who visited felt compelled to touch her forehead for a blessing. Bibi whispered to Nyah, "This child is an offering. But you, my love, you were the first bowl I ever poured water into." At first, nothing changed. Zola was the sun. But Nyah still felt like a small lantern glowing beside it. She carried her baby sister, sang her to sleep, helped change her, washed her clothes. She was happy, because there was a baby's cry in the house again. And Nyah believed love could be shared without running out. Until the first crack in the bowl appeared. One afternoon, while Nyah was hanging clothes, Zola played in the dirt, smearing mud all over the red dress gifted during her naming ceremony. Bibi rushed out, turned sharply to Nyah and snapped, "Who let her ruin her dress? Don't you know how to care for good things?" Nyah bowed her head. "I'm sorry, I was washing clothes." "If you're sorry, then wash it properly. Next time, don't touch anything that belongs to Zola." Nyah didn't cry. She just tightened the ancestor's bracelet on her left wrist, now faded from soap and sun. From that day on, everything began to shift. Nyah's chores doubled. Laundry, porridge, hauling water, sweeping, cooking, babysitting. Zola, just 2 years old, was already called Little Queen of Mbala. Bibi wouldn't let anyone touch her without washing their hands first. She was fed chicken and goat's milk, put to sleep on embroidered blankets blessed with ancestral incense. Nyah, who carried her until her arms ached, slept on a frayed mat by the kitchen door. Baba Zuberi stayed quiet, as always, but the small kindnesses, a roasted yam slipped into Nyah's hand, a ripe banana behind Bibi's back, came less often. He coughed more in the mornings, moved slower. And one day, Nyah heard him groan as he struggled to stand. Then, on Zola's 3rd birthday, her first full sentence echoed through the house. "I am a princess." The family burst into laughter. Nyah just smiled from the back step, then went to wash the dishes. That night, she sat alone. No fire, no candle, just the bracelet hanging loose on her left wrist. Her body now too thin to hold it tight. She whispered to her ancestors, as she once did to her mother and father, "If I was the first bowl you poured water into, then why has no one filled me again?" That year the rains came early. Clouds gathered over Mbala like a heavy quilt thrown across every rooftop. The baobab in the yard stopped blooming, and the first drops fell on the same day Baba Zuberi couldn't rise from bed. Before that, he had always been quiet, but steady, like the wooden beam holding up the kitchen roof. He didn't speak much, but when he nodded, it felt like a blessing. To Nyah, he wasn't the hugging type, but he was the one who always added firewood when the flames began to fade. Then one morning, he coughed. Not the kind of cough from cooking smoke. This was deep. A hollow drumbeat from inside his chest. Bibi said, "It's just the weather." Then later, "Maybe he ate something too cold." Until he coughed up blood. Nyah was the first to see it. She was carrying in a bowl of warm water when she saw Baba turn away, trying to swallow something dark and thick. She didn't scream. She just set the bowl down, took a worn rag, wiped the edge of his mouth, and whispered, "I'll make porridge, with the ginger Mama bought last week. Maybe it'll help." But Bibi was too busy with Zola. Ever since the child could speak in full sentences, Bibi barely let her out of sight. Even when Zola spilled soup, threw things, or splashed water, Bibi would say, "A spirited girl is a sign of a powerful soul." But Nyah, She got scolded just for washing the dishes out of order. Day by day, Baba lay still longer. He stopped telling folk tales, stopped slipping yams into Nyah's hand when Bibi wasn't looking. He just stared at the ceiling with eyes that seemed to drift further away, as if he'd reached the edge of something no one dared to name. That night there was no rain. The moon was full, but veiled in smoke. Nyah sat beside his bed, fanning him softly with her hand. Not a real fan, just her hand. She was afraid too much wind might make him cough. She didn't know what else to do, but stay. Then Baba opened his eyes, very slowly. His voice drifted like wind through an old, cracked door. "You are the last light in this house, Nyah. If I'm gone, don't let it go out." She leaned in and held his hand, the same hand that once lifted her from the edge. That hand was now colder than the earth outside. One long breath, one final blink. Then, silence. No wailing, no tears, just the quiet of a wooden pillar collapsing in the kitchen. The next morning, the news spread like smoke from slow-burning straw. Baba Zuberi, the quietest man in Mbala, had passed in silence. No drums, no procession, just an old mat, a quickly raised shelter, and Nyah standing behind it all like a shadow with red eyes. After the funeral, things changed, but not in the way people expected. Bibi didn't cry much. She just went quiet. For 3 days, she said nothing. Then on the 4th day, she looked Nyah in the eyes and said, "From now on, don't call me Mama. This house is only for me and Zola." From that day forward, Nyah wasn't allowed to eat with them. She couldn't wear nice wrappers. She couldn't sleep near the fire. She slept in the hallway, beside the mud wall, on a ragged mat once used for the baby chicks. Each morning she rose before the sun, carried water in the dark, washed clothes until her hands bled, cooked porridge without tasting it. She heard words like, "You live off my house, so work for it. My child is gold. You are dust. Don't let your dust touch my gold." Zola, now 4, began copying her mother. She stopped calling Nyah by name, waved her hand and said, "Hey, come here. You there, I want water." And Nyah, the girl who once was the light, was now the shadow beneath someone's feet. Only one thing remained, the ancestor's bracelet, though the leather was cracked, though only 2 wooden beads were still whole, she still wore it. And every night she whispered, "I'm hurting, but I haven't broken yet. Ancestors, if any of you are listening, please keep this kindness in me alive. Don't let it die. There are people who are poor because the rains didn't come. There are people who are poor because fate was cruel. And then, there are those who are poor even in how they love." After Baba Zuberi passed, the little house at the edge of Mbala was no longer a shelter. It became a camp of silence, where kindness was mute and every glance weighed heavy as a grinding stone. Nyah woke before the roosters. While the sky was still a bruised purple, she walked the wet dirt path with 2 buckets of water, each nearly the size of her own body. One morning, as she returned from the well, Bibi Kemi stood waiting at the door, arms akimbo. "What took you so long? Think the house will clean itself?" "Lazy little leech." Nyah didn't reply. She bowed her head, set the buckets down, picked up the broom, and swept. She didn't ask why she couldn't eat at the table. Didn't ask why Zola had new dresses while she wore hand-me-downs from a mother long gone. Didn't ask why she slept on a torn mat next to the sugarcane basket beneath the kitchen door. She just worked. Zola, now 5, was adored like a princess. Warm water for her face each morning, scented oils on her skin each night. And whenever she pouted, Bibi soothed her with millet cakes or new bangles. Nyah! When she failed to pick up a cloth Zola tossed, she was slapped. If she forgot to dry the laundry, she was punished by standing under the noonday sun. If the soup pot wasn't full enough, she was accused of stealing food. Slowly, the village began to notice. The old cassava seller at the market shook her head. "I've never seen a child work so hard and stay so silent." The women at the well whispered, "Bibi's eyes are like stone now. Has she forgotten the one who once carried that child?" Nyah became a shadow in the very home that once saved her. No one spoke to her. No one called her name. They just waved her over like a servant. though she wasn't even 12. One day, Zola spilled soup on the ancestral mat. Nyah rushed to clean it, hadn't even finished rinsing, when Bibi dragged her into the courtyard and struck her twice across the face. "You stained the ancestors' mat. Do you want this house cursed?" Nyah could only hold her cheek, eyes filling with tears, but still whispered, "I'm sorry, but it wasn't me." "Liar, just like your mother," Bibi spat, before throwing the wet mat into the yard. That night, Nyah curled up beside the dying fire, cheek still burning. She looked at the ancestors' bracelet, the one thing no one had taken from her. It was frayed now, only one wooden bead still shone. She whispered, "I know you hear me, ancestors, but if you're too busy, just let one person, just one, see me as a child, not a shadow." The next morning, she carried firewood to the market to trade for salt. Quietly, she added 3 sticks of wood to the basket of Mama Yara, the hunched old woman who sold fried dough by the gate. Mama Yara blinked in surprise. "You're giving me firewood?" "Yes, so you won't have to light the fire so early." "But child, you have so little." Nyah smiled gently, her bruised cheek still red. "You don't have to have plenty to share kindness." That was the first time in years someone cried for Nyah, but not out of pity. It was because they saw it. Some shadows don't scream, but they shine quietly. And from that day on, the whispers in Mbala changed. No longer gossip, but respect. There's something about that girl, something that refuses to break. But Nyah didn't know. She still rose early, still carried water, still obeyed every command. Only one thing changed. Each night she looked up at the sky and smiled, not because she was happy, but because her kindness was still intact. In Mbala, there was one day each year that made every girl dream of growing up. It was called Olan Dada, the Day of the Daughters. When the drums beat 3 times, every girl who had turned 12 was allowed to step into the village square, wear her finest wrapper, dust white powder across her cheeks, tuck flowers into her hair, and walk as if each footstep was an invitation from the ancestors to meet her destiny. It wasn't just a celebration, it was a moment to be seen, not as a worker, not as a shadow, but as a girl. The village buzzed with excitement. From sunrise, mothers laid out dresses, combed hair, painted foreheads. Zola, now 7, but granted special honor as Mbala's golden child, sat atop a tall wicker chair, laughing like a flower blooming in morning sun. Bibi rubbed shea butter into her legs, telling the neighbors, "The other village sent scouts this year. Zola will shine like the season's first sun." In the corner of the yard, Nyah was washing guest wrappers, her hands deep in cold water, blue veins visible beneath her wrist, her eyes fixed on a faded red wrapper hanging on the line. It was the only dress she had ever owned, left behind by her mother. Too small now, too old. But she washed it every month, just in case. Just after noon, when Bibi and Zola went inside to apply powder and jewelry, Nyah slipped quietly behind the house. She took off her ragged shirt and gently wrapped the red cloth around herself. Worn thin, yes, but clean and neatly folded. She used a shard of broken mirror to part her hair down the middle. For the first time in years, she looked at herself, not as a servant, but as a girl. "Just the edge of the square is enough," she whispered. "Just one step into the sunlight, without a water bucket." Her heart pounded, legs trembled. She stepped softly toward the gate. But before she reached it, a voice, sharp as metal against stone, cut through the air behind her. "Where do you think you're going, you ungrateful little thing?" Nyah froze. The ancestor bracelet on her wrist trembled. Bibi stormed out, face red, finger stabbing the air. "Who told you to wear the dress of the dead? That wrapper is not yours! Get back inside and scrub the house. You think wrapping yourself in cloth makes you something holy?" Zola, standing behind her mother, snickered and said, with sugary spite, "Wearing that won't change a thing. You still look ridiculous." Nyah didn't respond. She bowed her head, unwrapped the red cloth, folded it neatly, slowly, and put her old clothes back on. Then she walked out. Not toward the square, but toward the well. She fetched water, washed dishes, scrubbed pots, Back in the village center, the drums rolled, the kalimba sang, the crowd cheered, and the sound of rustling dresses filled the air like wind through silk. Zola emerged in a bright orange gown, hair braided with golden thread, ankles jingling with bronze rings. A princess from the pages of a story. The villagers clapped. Strangers asked her name. All of Mbala sighed in admiration. Meanwhile, behind the banana trees, at the edge of the compound, Nyah squatted beside a pile of dirty pots, her face smudged with ash, her hands cracked from soap, her eyes fixed on the direction of the drums. Not with envy, not with anger, but with a sadness as deep as a well. Not because there was no water, but because no one cared enough to draw it up. That night, while the village still buzzed with joy, Nyah carefully folded the red wrapper and placed it back in the old chest. On top, she set a single wooden bead, fallen from her ancestor bracelet. Then she whispered, "If I'm not meant to walk into the light, then please, don't let my heart go dark." And then she slept, dreamless, but her sleep was a quiet promise. That one day, no matter how many times she was stopped, a single step would still find its way out of the shadows. 3 days after the Olandada festival, Mbala still hummed with echoes. The villagers gossiped about Zola. The girl with sunlight in her eyes, the one destined to marry a prince, the maiden who smells of milk and sandalwood. Bibi paraded through the village, showing off Zola's new dress, a jar of fragrant oil, and a pair of slippers from the big market. She laughed heartily when teased. "Bibi, better start preparing to be a mother-in-law." That evening, as the sun kissed the thatched rooftops, a young man appeared at the gate. No trumpet, no horse, just a faded brown wrapper, worn-out sandals, and a small woven basket filled with bananas, palm oil, and a few sweet potatoes wrapped in banana leaves. His name was Ayo, from the village of Idoma, 3 hills and 2 rivers away. His voice was deep and plain. "I heard that Miss Zola is the shining jewel of Mbala. I didn't come to propose, just to speak." Bibi rolled her eyes, but Zola, rubbing lotion under the porch, burst into laughter. "A jewel? With that basket of yams?" She walked forward, laughing louder. "You're in the wrong village. I don't eat yams. I eat bird's nest soup." Ayo didn't flinch. He didn't blush. He didn't beg. He simply bowed his head. "Sorry for disturbing you." He turned to leave, but just then he saw Nyah. She was kneeling by the well, washing clothes, her hair tied back carelessly, her wrapper old, her hands covered in suds, her face streaked with dirt, her back damp from splashes. But her eyes, they looked up, and for just a moment they met his. Not long, not planned, just a glance, a single, quiet second that no one else in the village seemed to hear. Ayo stood still. Then, as he walked away, he paused, turned back to Bibi. "Forgive me, but may I ask the name of the girl by the well?" Bibi raised a brow. "Her, that's the help, not family, no last name." Zola waved dismissively, probably named something like Dust or Silence. "You came all this way just to look in the wrong direction." But Ayo smiled. That kind of smile only people who've walked through hardship know how to wear. And he said, "Some flowers don't grow in gardens. They bloom by the well. No one plants them, but they bloom anyway." Then he turned and walked away. No bow, no goodbye. Just silence left behind. And a glance no one had ever given Nyah before. A look with no pity, no judgment, just one simple truth. "I see you." That night, Nyah sat by the fire, arms wrapped around a bundle of firewood. Her heartbeat was steady, but something inside her had shifted. Not love, not hope, not fantasy, just a knowing. For the first time in her life, she had been seen. 3 days passed since Ayo first visited. Zola kept retelling the story, twisting it with laughter and mockery. "That country boy came with yams thinking he could talk to a princess." She'd shake her hips, mimic his voice. "I came, only hoping to speak." Bibi, never one to be outdone, added her sting. "Wearing knockoff sandals and dreaming of marrying my daughter? I could smell the poverty from the gate." No one said a word to Nyah, but she'd heard it all. She kept sweeping, cooking, fetching, scrubbing, only the look from that day. That one look still lived quietly in her chest, like a leaf refusing to fall. And then, on a cloudy morning, Io came back. No gifts, no basket, just himself, and one clear sentence. "I'm not here for Zola, I'm here for Nyah." The air stilled, as if someone had pulled the wind from the world. Bibi stormed out of the kitchen, head wrap crooked, face tight like a war drum. "What did you just say?" Io repeated, slower this time, each word hitting the ground like a drumbeat in the village square. "I came to speak with Nyah," Zola scoffed, arms crossed beneath the porch. "Are you insane? She's the house help, the firewood girl. She's no one." Bibi shouted, "Do you know where you are, boy? This house is not a place for beggars and gutter brides." But Io didn't flinch, didn't blink. "I'm not here to propose. I'm here because I saw someone who deserves to be called by name." In the corner of the yard, Nyah was carrying a basket of wet clothes. When she heard that, her hands trembled. The basket tilted. Water dripped onto the earth. She didn't lift her head, just stood still, like a shadow suddenly touched by light. Io turned to her. "I know you don't need me, but I need to know your name. And if you'll let me, I want to take you away from this place. Not to make you someone new, but so you can be exactly who you are." The courtyard went silent. Zola laughed dryly. "What a move. Win the poor girl's heart, then marry the rich one." Bibi was shaking with rage. "I don't approve. That bastard girl has no right to go anywhere." And that's when Nyah lifted her face. For the first time in years, she looked straight ahead. "I'm not a bastard. I'm the daughter of Amara, and I have the right to find the place I belong." Bibi staggered back, as if splashed with cold water, but Ao stepped forward. He didn't grab her hand. He didn't pull. He just stood beside her, close enough for her to know. If she walked, he'd walk too. Nyah looked down at her wrist. The ancestor's bracelet was nearly gone. Just one wooden bead left. She whispered, "If you're listening, ancestors, let me leave. Not because I hate this place, but because I've given it all the goodness I had." Then she nodded. No tears, no farewells. "I'm going." No drums, no celebration. No one followed. Just the sound of bare feet against the earth, and Zola's voice trailing behind, sharp and sour. "Go ahead and leave. Let's see who the real queen is now." But Nyah didn't look back, didn't reply. She just walked, with empty hands, bare feet, and a heart no longer bound. They left Mbala just as the sun stretched its fingers over the bamboo ridge. No goodbyes, no questions. Only the morning wind whispering through dry grass, as if the land itself was waving farewell, not realizing what it had just lost. Io walked ahead, Nyah followed. She carried nothing but a faded wrapper, a cloth bag filled with worn shirts, and her ancestor's bracelet, now with only one wooden bead left. Her bare feet touched cool soil. Her heart was no longer afraid. But it wasn't ready to believe either. She had once been pushed from the light, so even now, walking out of the dark, she dared not call this freedom. They crossed 3 hills, waded a river where Nyah saw flamingos in flight. For the first time, she realized nature had its own way of offering blessings. She whispered, "Where are we going?" Io didn't turn. His voice was soft. "Home." A day and a half later, they reached the gates of Idoma. Nyah's eyes widened. She had never seen homes made of honey-colored stone, never stepped on walkways lined with tree bark as soft as silk, never seen children in floral shirts running through wildflower gardens with no fences. No one gawked, no one whispered. People bowed gently, then greeted Ao in unison. "Welcome home, Your Grace." Nyah's brows furrowed. "Your Grace? What, did they just call you?" Ao turned. His eyes hadn't changed. Still warm, still simple. "I didn't say earlier, because I didn't want you to come for the wrong reason. I hold the crystal seal of this land. They call me King." Nyah stood still, unmoving, unbelieving. "King? You're a king?" Io nodded, but his voice was still soft, like rain-soaked soil. "I disguised myself to visit Mbala. I was looking for someone who wouldn't see a throne, but would see a man who longs to be loved truthfully. Nyah stepped back. Her hand touched the bracelet at her wrist. She wanted to cry, but no tears came. Only a thought echoed in her chest. If I am a shadow, let there be light that doesn't blind me. Io stepped closer. Not reaching, not rushing. You can go back. I won't stop you. But if you choose to stay, I don't want you to serve. I don't want you to bow. I just want you to be yourself. She stayed quiet. Then, softly, she whispered, I don't know how to be a queen. Io smiled. The same quiet smile she first saw at Mbala's gate, with a basket of yams in his hand. Good, because I wasn't looking for a queen. I was looking for a real heart. That evening, they entered a stone house beside the Idoma riverbank. No feast, no drums, no crowd. Only flowers blooming on the porch. And a girl who once lived as a shadow was now given a chair to sit. Not to serve, but to finally be seen. In Africa, rumors don't arrive in letters. They come with the wind, with scent. With the way a stranger brings a mango from the next village and adds, almost as an afterthought, they say, the servant girl from Bibi's house is wearing a crown now. It started with the flower seller in Mbala, who overheard the salt vendor whisper it. She gasped. Nyah? The one who gave me firewood when it rained? The other nodded. Yes, and not just any marriage. She married the king of Idoma. The marketplace laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was too real to be a joke and too painful to be a lie. That evening, Bibi was washing Zola's feet when a neighbor strolled in. Sister Bibi, have you heard the news? That girl you called Dust. She's queen now. Married King Io, it's true. Zola leapt up. No way, Mama, tell them it's nonsense. Bibi said nothing. The neighbor continued. They celebrated for 3 days in Idoma. They call her Lolo Nyah, the queen with a kind heart. And they say, she brought nothing with her but a wooden bracelet. And now, everyone wants to live like her. Zola threw her comb on the ground, her voice trembling. I should be queen! I'm prettier! I'm lighter! I never washed my hands in dirty water like her! But Bibi didn't respond. She stood slowly, walked to the back, opened an old chest. Inside, a red wrapper. The one Nyah used to wash every week. The one she never got to wear. Bibi sat down, held it close. And for the first time in years, she cried. She called me mother, and I called her Dust. But she was seed. From the yard, Zola shouted, I'll find another king, a richer one, a shinier throne. No one answered. The wind picked up, rustling through the roof, and the proud laughter from years before returned, echoing now like a funeral trumpet for something unnamed that had died inside. That night, Bibi sat alone. She looked at the moon, then down at her hands. The same hands that once slapped Nyah, now shaking like brittle branches. She whispered, I didn't lose her because she left. I lost her because I never knew how to make her stay with love. Meanwhile, at a stone house in Idoma, Queen Nyah sat under the porch combing her hair. No mirror, no silk gown, just a soft smile, because finally, not for anyone else, not for any crown, but for herself, she knew her patience was never wasted. A month after the news of Nyah reached the Mbongwe region, Zola still hadn't slept through a single night. She stopped eating sweets, stopped admiring herself in the mirror, stopped calling herself princess, though her heart still ached for a throne. One morning, while Bibi slept, Zola dressed in red, brushed chamomile oil through her hair, fastened an old necklace, and walked into the village square. What does she have that I don't? She whispered, eyes glinting in the early sun. That afternoon, a caravan of white horses entered Mbala. At the front, a man in a shining cloak, skin smooth, beard sharp, smile like every dream had bowed at his feet. They called him Prince Maleko. From the kingdom of Okuru, so distant, people knew it only through legend. He said, I've heard this land births beauty. I've come not to look, but to choose. Zola lit up like dry wood catching flame. She stepped forward, red dress clinging, bare feet proud. I am Zola, the fairest in Mbala. Who else could you possibly choose? Maleko scanned her from head to toe, then smiled faintly. You have beauty, but tell me, are you loyal? Zola nodded fiercely. Give me a crown, and I'll kneel. There was no wedding, no permission asked, no goodbye. She climbed onto the white horse, waved to the village, and shouted, I'll return one day, with a throne higher than Nyah's. Bibi couldn't stop her. She just stood, watching the dust rise behind her daughter, chasing a fire she had once lit, but never taught how to tend. 3 days later, no moon in the sky, Zola sat inside a forest clearing. A tent of silk, a candle-lit meal, servants kneeling. But each day, one servant vanished. No screams, no footprints. Zola asked Maliko. He just smiled. You ask more questions than a queen should. That night, as Zola reached to wash her face in scented water, she noticed a small scratch on Maliko's arm. Bleeding black. Not red, not warm, black. That night she heard a whisper. You are the final feast. She jolted awake. No guards, no silk, only ashes. Maliko stood at the center, eyes burning red, face distorted, mouth stretched to his ears, hands clawed. Not a prince, a demon, wearing a crown. Zola ran, bare feet slicing on stone, hair tangled, dress torn. The monster roared behind her. You wanted a throne? Then become a meal for the one who wears it false? Just as he lunged, a spear flew from the trees, piercing his chest. Zola collapsed, shaking, gasping, not knowing if she lived or not. Her savior, a solitary hunter who lived deep in the sacred woods. He brought her to his hut, fed her millet porridge, gave her herbal water, asked no questions. 3 days passed. Zola finally opened her eyes, her face hollow, hair falling in clumps, eyes dim. She whispered, I chased the throne and ran straight into a demon's mouth. I thought beauty was enough, but I've never even seen what's truly real. The hunter said only one thing. Some things shine just to burn the ones who dream too close. When she left the hut and returned to Mbala, no one recognized her. Thin, tanned, silent. Bibi collapsed in sobs, but Zola didn't cry. She sat before a mirror, not to admire, not to pose, just to look at the crack inside her soul. One misty morning, as the first white butterflies of the season fluttered along the Mbembe River, the villagers saw Bibi Kemi quietly packing her things. She wore a simple wrapper, carried no basket, spoke to no one. No one saw her off. No one asked where she was going, except Zola, who stood at the doorway, eyes red, lips tight. Where are you going, Mama? Bibi didn't turn around. To the place I should have gone. A long time ago, she crossed 3 hills, 2 rivers, just like Nyah once did. Empty hands, heavy heart. By late afternoon, she reached the stone gates of Idoma. The guards looked at her strangely. She had no letter, no gifts, no reason. But before they could question her, a soft, clear voice called out from within, Let her in. Under a ripe oob tree, with its purple fruit hanging like lanterns, Nyah was seated, combing the hair of a little girl. She wore off-white cloth, her hair neatly tied, and around her wrist, the wooden ancestor bracelet, now with just 1 bead left, but it gleamed brighter than ever. Bibi stepped forward. She didn't kneel, she didn't bow, she simply placed her hand over her chest. Her voice cracked like someone who had forgotten how to say, I'm sorry, I thought I was the one keeping the flame, but I was the hand that snuffed out your first light. I called you dust when you were the root, and I was just a brittle leaf too dry to shelter anyone. Nyah stood, softly, without haste. She looked straight at the woman who had once struck her, cursed her, forgotten her. The same woman she once called Mother. She stepped forward, placed a hand gently on Bibi's shoulder, and whispered, I carried pain, but I never carried anger, because if I held both, I'd have no room left for the light the ancestors sent me. Bibi broke, not with screams, not with sobs, but with a quiet, crumbling cry, like old roof tiles giving way under their first honest rain. All of Idoma Palace stood still. No applause, no poetry, just one woman once blind to love, now touched by the grace of the child she once forgot. Bibi stayed only a day. Before leaving, she held Nyah's hand, pulled from her pouch a small linen bundle. Inside is the last bead from your bracelet. I kept it the day you left, but now it belongs back on your wrist." Nyah said nothing. She nodded, took the bead, and placed it in the empty space. The wooden bracelet, whole again. 3 rainy seasons have passed since Nyah left Mbala. In Idoma, they no longer call her Lolo, the queen. They now call her Ebere, an old word that means she who turns patience into a crown. She doesn't sit on a golden throne. Her throne is a low wooden bench under the oob tree, where each evening, children gather in circles to hear her say, "Once there was a girl no one dared to name, but she learned. Her name wasn't what others said. Her name was how she chose to live." Every day, Nyah still wakes early, not to serve anyone, but to touch the morning before the world forgets how soft it begins. She still wears the ancestor bracelet, now whole again, with every bead returned to its place. It doesn't shine, but whenever she lifts a child who's fallen, it hums, as if the ancestors are whispering, "You have returned to the place that remembers you." One afternoon, while steeping lemongrass tea, Ayo approached. No royal robe, just plain cloth, like the first day they met. He sat beside her and placed an empty gourd on the table. She smiled. "What's this?" He replied gently, "An empty gourd, but placed in the right hands, it holds an entire season's rain." Nyah understood. No more words were needed. She held his hand, and for the first time asked, "If I hadn't said yes that day, would you have come back?" Ayo met her eyes. "No, because a true heart should never be begged to see what's right." That night there was no rain. The moon was full, no music, no feast. Just Nyah's voice softly singing her daughter to sleep, a child with the deep eyes of her ancestors, and a smile as gentle as her grandmother once had. And somewhere in the wind, the villagers still whisper, they once called her a shadow, but she became the light. She wore no crown of gold, but every step she took made the earth remember her name. Meanwhile, back in Mbala, Zola now sells bread at the market. No mirrors, no red dresses, but her eyes have learned to look downward, and her heart has finally learned how to say, "I'm sorry," to itself. And Bibi, every evening, lights her fire early, saving the best rice for an orphaned child next door. Not to erase her past, but to replant what she once ripped from the soil. Because some queens don't need thrones. They just need a heart that refuses to break. Beneath fire, beneath silence, beneath being forgotten. This isn't just Nyah's story. This is for every soul who has ever been unseen and still chose to live with grace. So if you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever been a shadow in your own home, remember this. Light doesn't ask for permission. It waits. And then it rises. Leave a comment if this story reached you. Like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded. They're not invisible. They're just becoming who they were always meant to be. Tales of Black, where shadows rise and silence finds a voice. Until the next story.